How does peer explaining work? Let's look at an example. Suppose you were going to explain stock taking as done in a shop. You plan this will take about 15 minutes. You tell your students that when you have finished teaching them about stock taking, each student will have to explain to the other in their pair either what is the stock taking process or why we do stock taking. These are your key objectives. Don't tell students in advance which of these they will explain, or they might just listen to only half of your teacher talk. At number 2 on the slide, you explain stock taking and why it is done, while the students listen. Do this in your usual way. You might use visual aids to help. Students will really attend because they will want to do their peer explaining well. To make sure the students don't try to write down everything you say, tell them just to listen and that you will give them time to make their notes later. Students can't write and listen well at the same time. Or you might say, while I explain, you may write short notes occasionally, but when you are not actually writing, please put your pen down and listen. Listening is very important. Just before 3 on the slide, you have finished explaining stock taking. Then you split students into pairs and tell them their topic. For example, you might say, in your pair, quote, those nearest the windows will explain what is stock taking. Those nearest the door will explain why we do stock taking. Number 3 on the slide. Now they know their topics, students make notes to prepare for their explanations. Give them a time limit, say a minute. Now you are silent, but you may help an individual who asks for it. Walk around and look at some notes, but resist commenting. 4. Students now take turns to explain their topic to their partner. Perhaps half a minute each. You can listen in and you can look at students' notes. Optionally, students can say one thing they liked about their peer's explanation and one thing that would have improved it. 6. Now you give a few key points for each of the peer explaining topics. You might show these on a board or on a screen. Students compare their notes and their peer explaining with your key points. What have they missed? What did they do well? 7. Now you ask them what they missed and what was hardest to understand or explain, and you explain further if necessary. When you and your students are practiced with this method, it is very quick, adding just a couple of minutes to your teacher talk. Often this 2-minute investment is well worth it, as students think, listen and learn well. Also, they enjoy the method much more than undiluted teacher talk. Why does peer explaining work? Let's compare teacher talk done with peer explaining with teacher talk done without peer explaining. In the left-hand column are 4 crucial cognitive science principles for good learning, expressed as questions. Consider the first principle. Quote, must students think hard about vital content? Well, if you are just explaining to students, they don't have to think hard about the vital content that you are presenting. They might even be thinking about something else. But if you use peer explaining, students do have to think hard about what is vital, what is not, and how they will explain it. They do this when they write their notes and when they explain to their partner. So let's mark the table accordingly. Now, must students create a meaning, i.e. an understanding, while you talk to them? Not necessarily, they might be thinking about something else. So let's mark the table like this. Will their understanding be checked and corrected often? Well, not with pure teacher talk. Even if you use questioning, it is unlikely to involve every student. But in peer explaining, each student has to check their own notes. They get a check from their peer after they have explained, and they get a check and correct of their understanding when they self-assess against your key points. That's 3 checks. They should have stock taking about right after that. So, does the teacher know about errors and omissions in learning? While teacher talk goes on, you can't know if the students are forming misconceptions. But with peer explaining, you can look over the students' shoulders at their notes, listen to the explanations of weaker students, and ask students what they missed or got wrong after they have assessed against your key points. So peer explaining is much better than pure teacher talk at helping students to learn. As you can see, it is likely to help most those who are normally least attentive and those who find the topic hard. When you and your students are practiced at using peer explaining, it can be done very quickly, as you can see from the timings given in red.